Welcome, viewers and listeners, to the Health Revolution, the program that shows you how to have a life of vibrant well-being. In a world full of noisy health trends, we bring you clarity. In a sea of fads, we reveal the science-backed strategies that truly work. We explore physical strength, emotional resilience, and mental mastery. These are the keys to an enriched life. Join us for inspiring interviews with champions who conquered life's health challenges, fueling your journey. Are you ready to unlock your potential? To live with vitality and purpose? Then join the Health Revolution. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, health and fitness expert, speaker, and a mom who understands. Let's embark on this transformative quest. Together, we're about to change the game, starting now.
I just laugh all the time.
The information provided in this show is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Viewers should use their own discretion and consult with a healthcare professional for personalized guidance and recommendations. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Health Revolution. We are so excited to have you join us today. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, and our show, if you are tuning into us for the first time, whether you're catching the live broadcast or on-demand replay, just know that it is all things health and wellness, not only the physical piece, but the emotional and the mental mastery as well. I'm excited about today's topic because we're getting into something that is affecting all of us as a society. It is the term of sustainability, how we obtain our food, how we are kinder to Mother Nature, and what can we do to optimize all of that. And my guest today is well-versed in all of this, and we'll be able to have a deep dive conversation about this, about what it means for regenerative agriculture. First, let's introduce him to you right now. Take a look at this. Meet Sander van Stee, a dedicated farmer who's reshaping the future of agriculture through regenerative practices. After realizing the limitations of conventional dairy farming, Sander embraced a journey towards sustainability and cow comfort, transforming his family farm in the process. Sander's commitment to regenerative agriculture is not just about improving animal welfare. It's a holistic approach that benefits the environment, the soil, and ultimately human health. By mimicking natural ecosystems, Sander is helping to restore balance and biodiversity to the land. But Sander's journey hasn't been without its challenges. As he focused on the health of his cows, he faced his own health struggles, which led him to question conventional medical approaches and seek holistic solutions. This personal experience further fueled his passion for natural, sustainable farming methods. Today, we dive into what it takes for a regenerative future and how to bridge the gap for farmers, environmentalists, and the rest of us to meet in the middle. Sander van Stee, welcome to the show. How are you? We are so excited that you're here today. So let's get right into it. What exactly is regenerative agriculture, and how have you transitioned from your family's farming history to where you are today?
Yeah, regenerative agriculture, put very simply, is when you farm in a way that maximizes the health of the soil. And you can get a lot more complicated than that, because what you're really trying to manage for is the microbial life in the soil. But I got there basically through struggling with my own health journey. And I've always been interested in farming, and I always knew I wanted to work with animals. But it wasn't until I started having all sorts of hormonal issues and started struggling with my own health, and I felt like an old man at the age of 25. And it ended up being a real inflection point in my life where I started reconsidering a lot of my priorities as far as not only the way we farm, but just like my health choices. And I started to really doubt the healthcare system because they really weren't able to help me in any way, shape, or form. And long story short, it took about 6 years for me to regain my health. And then in that process, I've also transformed our farm, and it's not transformed completely yet. We're still in the process. We're still moving towards regenerative agriculture and trying to improve our soil health. But now we still have a commercial dairy farm, but now we also have the grass-fed beef, and then we have pasture turkeys following behind our grass-fed beef. And it really mimics the natural systems where you used to have massive herds of wild bison, and you'd have birds following in behind them. They complement each other really, really well.
And you've obviously farming has been in your history, in your family's history for a long period of time. What was it like? What were some of the themes, the values that you had growing up? What were some of the messages you got about farming, about the role farming has as we continue to change in society?
That's right. Yeah, my family farmed in Holland for farther back than I can even tell. It's always been mostly dairy farming as well in both sides of my family, and then my dad and my uncle immigrated to Canada in order to split the farm because they were able to buy two farms for the price of one in Holland. So it's many generations of agriculture, and yeah, there's a lot of knowledge passed down generation to generation. Unfortunately, a lot of that is also limiting. There's a lot of limiting beliefs that I inherited from my dad, but also very helpful stuff. There's lots of timeless knowledge, like things that you don't necessarily get taught when I went to University of Guelph. I wasn't taught a lot of the things that my dad was taught, and it's interesting seeing how school and lessons has changed over the years and over the generations. There's some things that are aligned and other things that have changed, but yeah, there's a lot of old knowledge, and you kind of have to be careful whenever you go down the road like I am now, where you're starting to buck up against convention and change the norms, because those norms are there for a reason. But yeah, so which makes it the transition right now, I have to be a little extra careful because yeah, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and change everything, because things are the way they are for a reason. Commercial agriculture has a lot of pluses: the ability to feed a massive population and produce consistent products for our population. But there's also issues with sustainability, and there's things that we can learn from regenerative agriculture and apply to commercial agriculture to basically get the best of both worlds. And that's the journey that I've been heading down recently.
And it's ever apparent that, you know, the agricultural industry it plays the role that it does in terms of feeding and the food supply and the food chains that we have today. When was your first exposure to the benefits of regenerative agriculture? Do you remember when your frame of thinking, and not just farming, but your frame of thinking started to shift a little bit with what maybe you've always known about farming?
I do, yeah. It was around 2015 when we completed the construction of a new dairy facility, and we moved all of our animals over to the new facility. And I saw the cows' health improving, and it brought me so much joy to see these cows being healthier, performing better. But around that time, that's when, ironically, when my own health started to slip. So that was right around 2015, and that's when I was doing the research. I was starting to look for alternative. That's when my mind started to shift. My mindset and my belief started to shift. And I heard about regenerative agriculture here and there in that process. But I feel like the point where it really sunk home is when I heard of another fairly large commercial agriculture in North Dakota that was farming using regenerative agriculture practices. And I realized that it wasn't just a practice or a management style that could be applied to hobby farms or small scale farms, but could be applied to larger commercial farms. And that's when I really started thinking about like how I could change the way we manage our farm to apply some of these regenerative principles and improve our soil health and have some of those massive benefits that you hear about with regenerative agriculture.
When did it become ever apparent that this is a concern that we often don't talk about? Because I know that as we're talking about regenerative agriculture, there might be some who are watching that are like, I don't
know how this affects me, and why should I be concerned? What would you tell the viewer who's tuning in going, I'm still not quite sure what it all looks like? What is the concern that is starting to be more ever apparent?
Yeah, if I could take a step back in order to give you a bit of a science lesson that will help explain the benefits of these products that are produced with regenerative agriculture, is that the microbial life in the soil is critical for making this whole system work. And what happens when you have enough diversity of microbial life, if you have not just bacteria, which is really common in our soils, but also the fungus and the nematodes, which are worms, and the arthropods, the insects, and you have a really complex food chain. What the plant can do in this environment is that it can excrete sugars into the soil, and it can trade those sugars for nutrients. And there's a real keystone species, a fungal species called mycorrhizal fungi, which are essentially long filaments, and they embed into the roots of the plant and reach out into the soil, and they transport the sugars and the nutrients back to the plant. And it's a real beautiful system where the plant can get these nutrients on demand. But difficult things happens when you start adding some of these practices which are common with commercial agriculture, like large equipment, and you compact the soil, or you spray it with fertilizers or herbicides or pesticides or fungicides, or you plant just single species, these monocrops that are very common. Especially the fungus is very, very sensitive, and they die off really easy. And then when that happens, that whole food chain collapses. So now the plant can excrete these sugars, but it can no longer get the nutrients in return. So then the plant basically shrivels up and dies, and you are dependent on fertilizer in order to grow anything. In commercial agriculture, it is a literal addiction to fertilizers that requires us to use them in order to grow anything. And that's one direction where it kind of all falls off the horse. But also, if you have everything perfect, but then you apply some synthetic fertilizers just to get that boost in fertility and that boost in growth, what will also happen is, because the plant now gets the nutrients from the synthetic fertilizers, it no longer needs it from the microbial life. So then it no longer excretes the sugars into the soil. So then, because there's no sugars, there's no base food for this whole diverse food chain, all those microorganisms die off as well. So by using the synthetic fertilizer, we are becoming dependent on synthetic fertilizers. But sure. Yeah, I'm almost done. Real quick. So what happens with these synthetic fertilizers, you can grow a plant relatively well, but you can never fertilize for every single nutrient that can be found in the soil. So what ends up happening is, because the plant can't get all these tiny little micronutrients, it doesn't have it. And then you end up with that lower nutrient density in the final product. And it's not only the fruits and vegetables that are growing, but also the pastures are less nutrient dense and they're less healthy. So like, you have soils that are less healthy, which grows plants that are less healthy. The animals that eat those plants are less nutrient dense, they're less healthy. And it works its way all the way up to our plate, where the food that we're eating is less nutrient dense, it's less healthy.
So you being a farmer and being aware of this, when was this made apparent? When did you discover that this was an issue, and understanding the practices of farming and agriculture? When did, in your opinion, when did some of this come to fruition in society's timeline? How far back are we talking that this was becoming a practice that is having this type of impact on society?
I feel like it's an issue that has always plagued agriculture, even 10,000 years ago with the initiation of the agricultural revolution. We started with tillage, and tillage, it disturbs the soil life. It disturbs the microorganisms, especially the fungus. Like, as soon as you till it, as soon as you flip it upside down, as soon as you plow it, cultivate it, you prepare that seed bed. It has always been an issue. It's just, we keep improving our ability to extract food from our soils and basically over demand production from our soils. So it's just getting exacerbated over time. So now it's no longer just the plowing and the cultivating and preparing the seedbed. It's also the fertilizers and the herbicides and the pesticides, all the synthetic chemicals that we're adding. It's just one thing after another.
So is this the result of overpopulation, or the fact that our population on the planet is growing to where it is right now? Is that also adding to the mix?
I feel like whether or not we have a large population on the planet, there will be a constant trend towards more and towards basically larger yields in hopes of getting larger profits. So like I feel like it's not necessarily an issue with overpopulation. I feel like it's a lack of understanding and a lack of appreciation for the system that nature has already created for producing food in an efficient way. So we need to learn the lessons from nature and apply that to commercial agriculture so we can have the best of both worlds.
What's the dialogue that you've had with others in the agricultural industry? Maybe not just farmers, but those who play a different role outside of farming. What's the conversation like? What are you hearing?
It depends. Like on the consumer side, there's some people that love that, like, they've done the deep dive, they've researched regenerative agriculture, they love how things are produced more naturally, and those consumers are willing to pay an arm and a leg to get these products. They're full out believers. And then you have kind of like the mass consumer, the average person. They're the ones that usually go to the grocery store and they buy the package of ground beef that's 10 cents cheaper than the one beside it, or the carton of milk, because that's all they really care about is getting those cheapest products. And their real concern is like, oh, regenerative agriculture, it sounds nice, but it's expensive. And then on the other side of the coin, like if I'm talking to farmers, they're amongst commercial farmers, there's a real frustration when it comes to trying to build soil health. Because we've been trying for years already to apply these different principles that are being initiated by the government, being promoted by the government. There's all sorts of fund sharing, like cost sharing, things that you can apply for that helps you implement some of these practices like no tillage or cover cropping, adding more diverse plants. But unfortunately, it hasn't paid off from the perspective of the farmer. We've been doing it for long enough to see that if you just look at cover cropping, for example, and you just do that, there's no real tangible benefits for soil health. And the reason is because it's just one piece of the puzzle. You have to get all the puzzle pieces in place to really reap the benefits, to really have that diverse microbial life in the soil where you can now start pulling back on things like fertilizers and herbicides and pesticides, and start having those cost savings and the benefits of sequestering the carbon in the soil that you would get when you have it all, when you follow all the principles of regenerative agriculture.
Before we go to break, how long I want to ask you this question. How long did it take for you to notice when you were implementing regenerative agricultural practices to see that the tides were starting to turn, some subtle differences in how you were farming before with new practices today? How long did it take for you to see that?
Yeah, and I don't have everything figured out, so I don't pretend to have the perfect farm. For me, it's still a journey that I'm heading down. I'm still learning how to apply all these principles to some, but not all facets of commercial agriculture. But like for some things, like when you see the animals on pasture, that the benefits you see almost immediately when you see the cows having a good time out on pasture, playing and running around and enjoying the fresh air and enjoying the grass and the sunshine. And then also like the way that the turkeys and the birds and the grass-fed beef, the way they synchronize into like a real beautiful system where they complement each other. Like the beef, they eat the grass, they shorten the grass so the turkeys can walk through. They struggle to walk through long grass. And then the turkeys follows 3 days behind the beef, which then allows the bugs and the insects that are attracted to the manure from the beef, allows those larvae to hatch, and then the turkeys can eat those insects, and they also spread the manure and spread that fertility out throughout the pasture. But then also the turkeys add their own fertility. They add their own nitrogen. The manure from turkeys is really high nitrogen, which the grass from the pasture really grows well with. It's like seeing things like that, those are almost immediate. But then other things like applying these principles to row cropping is much more delayed, and it's much more nuanced and difficult, but possible. There's lights at the end of the tunnel.
And we're going to continue this conversation. First, we're going to take a break. We will be right back. Stay with us.
Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this.
Hello, Wellness Warriors. Welcome back to Fit Bites with Adriana. Today, I've got a life hack that's simple, yet incredibly effective for boosting your immune system. Hydration. Now, you might be surprised to learn that when we start catching a cold or feeling under the weather, our water intake often drops. But here's the thing. Staying hydrated is crucial for our immune system's ability to function at its best. Water helps to transport nutrients and oxygens to your cells, flushes out toxins, and keeps your mucous membranes moist, which can reduce the chances of infections. It's like giving your body's defense system the support it needs to fight off invaders. So, how much water should you drink? For bare minimum, aim for at least 8 glasses a day, but listen to your body. If you're feeling unwell, you want to increase your water intake to help your body recover faster. I definitely do that when I'm feeling a little under the weather. And if plain water isn't your style, try adding a slice of lemon, cucumber, or some berries for a flavor boost. Herbal teas and coconut water are also great to stay hydrated. Now remember, this life hack is not just for when you're feeling sick. Make hydration a part of your daily routine to keep your immune system strong all year round. Now stay tuned for more Fit Bites, and here's to staying hydrated and healthy.
Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices.
Welcome back to the Health Revolution. My guest today is Sander van Stee. We are talking about a farmer's quest for sustainable harmony. Sander is a farmer, and he's also the founder of Moral Eats. And Sander, before the break, we were talking about some of the different trends that you've noticed in terms of how the ecosystem helps to amplify and maximize just the circle of life, so to speak. And I can't help but ask, how did this affect you personally in terms of your personal journey, your health? Can you get into some of the origins of you taking a step back and looking at your health and how it all is part of this picture?
Yeah, that was really the genesis of this whole journey, is my own health journey. And it started off with a lack of libido and I didn't understand where it was coming from. And I went to my doctor and I said, like, my libido's been low for months. What's going on? And then I asked him, like, could it be low testosterone? Could it be my sex hormones? And he just looked me up and down and said, you got some body hair, you got some muscle mass. I think you're fine. But I insisted, And because in Canada there's free healthcare, but because the doctor didn't believe my testosterone was low, I had to pay for that test out of pocket. And sure enough, my testosterone was in the single digits. It was very, very low. And that started a real journey of, like, I was bouncing from one specialist to another specialist, and trying to find somebody that knew the answer, could help figure out what was going on. But unfortunately, beyond giving me hormone replacement therapy, they really had no answers for me. They were looking for all sorts of rare diseases or genetic defects, but couldn't find anything. And I had to basically take things in my own hands and start really. I was on a real long journey of trying to find ways that I could improve my own health, stack these healthy habits like lots of sleep and exercise and healthy diets, and I experimented with all the different things that you might hear when people talk about health. I've basically tried it all, and I've kept the habits that worked for me, and I let go of the ones that didn't, or that didn't fit. And I was very motivated and very strict with all these habits because I had a very strong reason. A low libido causes havoc on your whole life. My whole body hurt. I couldn't even walk without pain. And I have a physical job. So it took every ounce of motivation just to make it through my average day. And then let alone the impact that I had on the relationship with my wife, and the energy levels I had to basically be present with my children. It affected everything. Like, it was because of the massive impact it has in my life, it was very easy to stay motivated and really pick these different habits and really stick to them over time. And it, it it's easy to say it in a quick bite-sized fashion when you're asking a question, but it took me 6 years of true hard dedication. And then after that, but up to that six year, I was still on hormone replacement therapy. I was still not feeling 100%. And it wasn't until I did a prolonged fast where it seemed to be a bit of a biological reset, and my body finally was able to relax. And after when I broke that fast, that's when I really started noticing a difference in my energy levels and the way my body felt. And sure enough, when I had my hormones retested, they were back to normal.
And what was the dialogue between you and your doctor when this discovery was happening? I'm curious to see what was the feedback you got from your doctor that this was the homework that you did, and these were some of the findings you were coming across in trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah, it's they're very myopic, and like they're very they have tunnel vision. It seems like this is their specialty, and that's all they can see. So, like, beyond, like, when I saw my specialist, beyond the hormone replacement therapy and all these rare diseases that you might find in his textbook, he was very close-minded. I brought up to him the potential of burnout, and could that explain the fact that my hormones were gone, and me feeling tired and beat up. And he basically said that being burnt out is not a real condition. It's not a real thing. There's no proof that actually can happen. So basically, yeah, I was left on my own. And when I finally was able to regain my hormones, basically the relationship with these doctors disappeared because I was no longer needing to see them. So they weren't really interested in, like, wow, all of a sudden your hormones are back. It's like they weren't even curious, it seems. It was just, they just accepted the fact that I was no longer a patient. I was no longer part of their paycheck. And that was the end of that relationship.
And just to add context and clarity, you are in Canada, and at the same time, and we're seeing this in North America, not just here in the United States, but Canada. And then this is a global concern that comes up. We've talked about in the show with other guests as well, that doctors, to add a realistic landscape of a picture, they oftentimes speak strictly from limited training, and yet sometimes there are those who discover that there is no further looking beyond residency programs and what have you. So with that, I'm getting that the conversation wasn't as productive with your doctors, that maybe that there was a little bit of either pushback or a stalemate that you weren't able to feel like that it was this cohesion, like a partnership with your doctors?
No, I didn't get that feeling. Like I got the feeling they were trying their best, and they were very personable, very friendly. They were nice people, and they but yeah, they had the same issue that I feel like, yeah, all or most people in healthcare have, or in health in general, is just like you have a hard time letting go of the material that you know, and what's comfortable, and what's familiar, and embracing the things that you could really have more control over, which is just your general lifestyle.
And then also, to be fair, I also want to point out that sometimes that there's those percentage of doctors that, just in terms of the interest of time, it's almost like their feet are not touching the ground, trying to keep up with patients and insurance and just clinic practices, that there's just, we wish that there was all this time in the world, but that's not the case. So as your health was improving, how did you make the connection, and what were some things that you got excited about to really turn things around with your health and the association with farming practices?
Yeah, there are some habits that surprised me, that they had such a large impact on the way I was feeling. Like, one, for example, was cold exposure. I found that simply by having regular cold exposure, I became more aware of what stressed feels like. Because when you're being exposed to cold temperatures, the goal is to help your body relax and calm down under this extreme stress. So then I became aware of the fact that, of like what stress feels like, what stress breathing feels like. And one of the things that happens is you breathe high in your chest and your diaphragm sucks up. And that's what stress feels like. And I started realizing that I was walking around my average day breathing in a stressed way, really high up and shallow. So the cold exposure helped just help me become more comfortable with the cold, but also help me be more aware of what stress feels like. And I can't overstate the impact that stress has on your hormones and on being healthy, because like stress affects your hormone production on multiple levels, at the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and then at the your ovaries or gonads. It affects it at every single level. It decreases the production of these hormones. So like that made a massive difference. And stress can be in any sort of shape or form, because your body deals with stress as if it's all in one bucket. It doesn't matter if it's nutritional stress or if it's emotional stress or physical stress. It's all the same. It takes from the same pool of resources to deal with those stresses. So like another stress for me, speaking of nutritional, was like I was reacting to all sorts of different kinds of foods that were in my diet. And once I removed those foods, I was also on the hunt of like, what's the healthiest foods that I could replace those foods with? Like, what is the healthiest diet? What is the ideal diet for humans? And I'm sure everybody's aware that like that's a very difficult space to go down. But like one thing that they all do agree on is that you need to eat whole foods. So I started there. And then the time when I got sick, the vegan movement was in its heyday, and it was told that it would basically solve every problem that humans deal with. So I tried that even. And I ate whole food, plant-based diet. And then over the time, I added in more animal-based products. And that's when I started to improve my health even more. And I've had it from one extreme to the other, just 100% plants, whole foods, to 100% meat and animal products that are whole foods. And I ended up somewhere more in between, but still a surprising amount of animal products in my diet. And if I look back, it kind of makes sense, because once you deal with the amount of stress that's in your life, another real important benefit for your hormones, or a real important aspect for improving your hormone health, is giving your body those base nutrients that it needs to create those hormones. And cholesterol is the building block of all sex hormones.
And you bring up some very valid points. Now, for for viewers who are familiar with veganism and whatnot, I do want to circle around to this, because there could be somebody who is watching this and just feeling a certain type of way about what all of this looks like and the case for veganism. And how have you approached that when you said that you personally tried it? And what is your response to regenerative agriculture, and how beneficial it is for someone who maybe is more reserved and feeling not just having mixed feelings about the agricultural industry and all of that?
Yeah, like, the beauty thing about regenerative agriculture is that it can apply to any sort of food production, not just like it applies very easily and simply when you're raising animals on pasture and you're rotationally grazing them, which is what you typically see in the regenerative space. But you can apply those principles to row crops like your grains, and also fruit production and vegetable production. So you can have these nutrient dense foods produced in a regenerative way no matter what your diet is. So for me, like, I really tried the vegan diet very strictly, and like everything else that I was adding and trying in my life to improve my health. And I was really aware that typically a vegan diet, it can be hard to get enough calories in. It can be difficult to get enough fats in, and also difficult to get enough protein in. So I was very keenly eating lots of seeds, lots of beans, lots of nut butters, lots of beans and lentils. Like, I was really focused on getting in those whole food sources of proteins and fats, and also just not just salads. That's not necessarily vegan, but I was eating lots of potatoes and sweet potatoes and rice, and just lots of whole foods, lots of hearty ingredients that I was trying to get enough calories into my diet. And despite that, over time, I still started building more and more sensitivities. Every single time I revisited what like the testing of like what foods I'm reacting to, they just added foods to my list. So it's like I'm being very strict. I'm being in this eating this diet that's supposed to be ideal for people. And yet I feel like my body is still struggling. I feel like it's getting more and more sensitive over time. So that's when I started looking in different directions, started adding these animal foods back in, and being really careful what kind of foods I add back in, because they have to be whole foods. They have to be as processed as little as possible. And I found that when I did, I started getting a lot more energy, and certain foods like eating like the red meats, they're very easy to digest. Those is whole foods. Yes, all whole foods are packed full of nutrients, especially when they're produced in a regenerative way, but they're not all equally digestible. And that's what the animal products really added to my diet, is the digestibility of these nutrients, the ability for my body to actually get the nutrients that's in the food. So that's when I started getting more and more energy. And then I also added in something called like the raw dairy. I'm one of the very few people in Canada that can legally drink raw dairy because we produce it. You can't sell it, you can't transport it, you can't distribute it in any way, but because we produce it, I can drink it. And raw dairy is great for my gut health and nutrition and the health of it. It's an amazing product that can digest itself in your gut, all while colonizing it with healthy bacteria. So over time, now eating this way with a significant amount of animal products, I've actually decreased the amount of foods I'm sensitive to. So foods I used to react to, now I can eat without any problem. Eggs being an example. I used to react to the protein in eggs, and I eat eggs every day now.
So, and you're bringing up something really interesting, and I want to ask this real quickly before we go to break. So, raw dairy. Now, that conjures up in my mind of the potential to be harmful to the system, the intestinal system, and just what it can do to the body. How did you come to this discovery?
Yeah, raw dairy is a bit of a hot topic because most people can agree, like, okay, potentially there are these health benefits, which I can get to after the break, but is it worth the risk? Isn't it too dangerous for us to eat? What about all the pathogens? And I personally looked at the data for the number of illnesses that are created from drinking raw milk. And you have to keep in mind, only 3.2% of the population in the US drink raw milk. So keeping that in mind when you're looking at the data, um, there is an increased risk when you're drinking raw milk. Like the stat that the National Institute of Health puts out there is that there's a 98% increase in risk in getting sick from pathogens when you drink raw milk over pasteurized milk. However, that's the difference between relative and absolute risk. If I look at those exact same numbers and look at me personally, what's my risk if I drink raw milk? If I drink milk every single day for a whole year, my chances of getting sick is 0.0075%, which works out to being about once every 13,000 years.
And we'll continue this conversation. It's getting intriguing. First, we're going to take a break. Stay put.
Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this. Thank you so much for watching The Health Revolution. Our show is growing, and it's all thanks to viewers like you. No matter how you found us, please hit the subscribe button so we can stay connected and continue to deliver amazing content to you.
Life is so fragile, and we're constantly reminded just how fragile life can be, especially when we or a loved one is told we have cancer. Cancer survivor myself, I can tell you, we still feel very alone in this journey.
There's a study that's been showing that patients who are socially isolated have a worse prognosis, have a worse outcome than patients who are socially interconnected.
Buddies for Life is a non-profit cancer support group for those whose life has been impacted by cancer. Humor, hope, heart, and hugs.
Humor, hope, heart, hugs, and a whole lot of love.
Share this with your friends and family and support this community in every way you can. No one should face cancer alone.
I am a chemo buddy for life.
We are a buddies network.
No one does cancer alone.
Be a buddy.
And we are all here for you as a community of love.
We are chemo buddies for life.
And if you've heard 3 words, you have cancer, for yourself or someone else, you belong with us at Chemo Buddies for Life.
Healing through connections.
And now we want to give special thanks to Biomed Mobile IV for sponsoring the Health Revolution. Biomed Mobile IV is Colorado's top mobile IV therapy service, servicing throughout the state of Colorado. They offer an array of vitamins and above and beyond safety preparation. Biomed Mobile IV, your dedication to health and wellness is exactly what our show is all about, and we thank you for your support. Welcome back to the Health Revolution.
Welcome back, everybody. My guest today, Sander van Stee. He is a farmer. He's also the founder of Moral Eats, and we've been having an incredible and a much needed conversation about his quest for sustainable harmony, implementing regenerative agricultural practices to the way that we eat today and the impact it has on our health. So, Sander, before the break, we were talking and we were getting into raw dairy and some of the statistics you've come across. And I want to pose the question to you, how much of the complexities of raw dairy does it come from agricultural practices, maybe stemming from the commercial side of things? I'm wondering how much does commercial agriculture add to the fact that it's such a complicated act, and that it's not something that is something that's a dicey move for some.
As far as raw milk, you mean?
Yes, raw milk, and then just underneath the umbrella of raw dairy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's, if you look back in history of when pasteurization started, it happened after a massive outbreak of disease where 1,000 infants died. So like there was a real reason for these animals, or for these milk to be pasteurized. But if you look at the conditions that these animals were housed in, it was common practice to have cows put in a warehouse next to a brewery in the middle of the city where it was dark, dingy, and dirty. And they were basically fed a diet of nothing but the waste products from this brewery, instead of a really fibrous diet of grasses, which they would naturally eat. So like this milk that they produce, you almost can't even call it milk. It was so watered down because these animals are so unhealthy and sickly that they actually to add chalk to the milk just so that it would look right. So that's the milk that these people were drinking, where you had this massive outbreak and people got sick. It's not surprising. Sick animals produce sick food. So luckily over time, like that's no longer practice. That's no longer done. The animal housing has improved over time. And that's the beautiful thing about agriculture, and especially with cattle and animal agriculture, is that the goals are very well aligned of that with the animal and the farmer, where the better you treat these animals, the better the animals do, the more they produce. So it's in the financial best interest of the farmer to do a good job taking care of their animals. And luckily over time, the knowledge of what that requires improves, and the animal housing and animal management improves over time. So commercial agriculture is constantly improving, and it is night and day better than what it used to be. And so like the risk of milk is not the same risk as it was back when we first started pasteurizing. For example, since 2005, the chances of illness from raw milk has decreased by 74%. And that's also contributed by the fact that you can produce milk differently when you're producing it specifically for raw consumption. You can be extra careful. You can add more sanitation standards to the way it's handled and to the way it's produced. So like there's things that we can do that can dramatically decreases the chance of contamination of our milk products.
So I'm curious, what role does technology play in regenerative agriculture? What does that look like?
Yeah, regenerative agriculture in general looks much more like the way our great grandparents used to farm. There's a lot of changes back to the way we used to do things, specifically the generalizations of a farm. The general trend for commercial agriculture is towards specialization and becoming very efficient at producing one food over and over and over again, and it becomes just a habit of doing things in a way that produces that efficiently. Whereas regenerative agriculture, the way it wants to interconnect and reintroduce that diversity, it really pushes farmers back towards generalization, where you have many different type of animals produced, many different sources of income, a broader need for a lot of the knowledge base. There's much more things you need to know in order to produce all these different types of foods well. So that's a general trend that I see with the regenerative movement. But like, we have to be careful, because just because something is natural or closer to nature does not necessarily mean that it's better. So like technology will still play a role in scaling up regenerative agriculture beyond just from the homestead up to being able to feed the population of the world. So things like large equipment, like the large harvesters and the large planters, the no-till equipment, a lot of that stuff needs to be implemented and used in regenerative agriculture in order to scale it up and produce this healthy, nutrient-dense food in a more not profitable, but in a more low-cost way, so that the average consumer can have access to these healthier products.
And this is, to me, this is fascinating. We've got another break coming up, but before we get there, I'm curious, what kind of support have you gotten in your region in terms of you making the case and letting it be known, and you taking action, embracing regenerative agriculture?
There's an awful lot of interest, but unfortunately, from the farmer side, like I was speaking about earlier, there's a lot of issues with people trusting the benefits and the possibility that this can be applied on a large scale, because they've been burned before. They've made the investments in the cover cropping. They've changed their equipment over to no-till, and they've had to switch back because they weren't able to make profits. Farming is a very unique business where you have massive amounts of money invested for a relatively small return. You're equity rich, but you're cash poor. So you have to be able to make profit off your land in order to pay the bills and stay farming. So unfortunately, there's been more difficulty from the farmer's perspective of adopting these principles. But on the consumer side, the interest just keeps growing. People are just getting more and more interested in how their food is produced. They want these nutrient-dense foods. They want these healthier foods. They want all the benefits. They want to be healthy.
Absolutely. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. Stay put. We'll be right back.
Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this.
Hi, this is Clara Capano, your host for Women Winning Their Way, where we talk about how you can create success all on your terms. Join us Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Limelight Network here on E360 TV.
Welcome back to the Health Revolution.
Welcome back, everybody. My guest today, Sander van Stee, farmer and founder of Moral Eats. And Sander, where can we find you in terms of the internet and on social media?
Our website is www.moraleats.com. And in there, you can see all of our links to our social medias. We produce content for TikTok, for YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. On TikTok and YouTube, I'm Sander van Stee. And on Instagram and Facebook, I'm Moral Eats. And on Facebook, Moral Eats Farms. So that's where we produce all of our content. But our favorite way to connect with people is through email. And you can find a link on our website to sign up for our email list. And we like that because we don't have to rely on an algorithm to put our information in front of you. So what we do for people that do sign up is we give them the chance to win a free sample meat box of all the products that we have available.
And question for you before we wrap up, how do you stay on top of the regenerative agricultural practices? What are some things that you do to stay on top of the evolving topic?
Yeah, I watch a lot of content on YouTube. I listen to a lot of other farmers, what they've tried. So we're trying to learn from each other. And that's the beautiful thing with the internet is I can learn from farmers all around the world because locally, there's not really that many farmers doing it. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's a lot of farmers doing it in a way that with grazing animals and doing that rotational grazing, that's quite common. You can usually find farmers doing that around every major city. So, but as far as applying it further to the rest of agriculture, that's much less common and much more difficult as well. So that's where I'm taking inspiration from farmers across the world. But the real best way to learn is just to apply these principles, just try experiments. So I'm running all sorts of experiments on our farm just to try to make this dream a reality.
Well, Sander van Stee and founder of Moral Eats, we appreciate you being here and just sharing the knowledge and information we all need to know about our food supply and just how important it is in terms of ecosystem and just how we move globally. Thank you so much for being here.
It's an absolute pleasure.
And for those of you who are, of course, you're tuning in, please remember that our website is www.thehealthrevolutiontv.com. Over there, you can subscribe to our newsletter and keep up to date with some of the shows, what we've got coming up for 2024. In addition to that, as the crow flies, you can see our QR code in the upper corner of your screen. And then, of course, don't forget that we are on every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern on E360 TV in any of the manner distribution channels that you have tuned into. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. That is all the time that we have today. Until next time, take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon.